Me for the good song service, and Johnny for the good prayer. I have enjoyed being here today as I'm here on a fairly regular basis when I'm not off somewhere else. It's always a joy to stand before you because you're such a good group of listeners. You listen well, and I noticed several take notes, and I think that's a good thing. I appreciate also the birthday song this morning. I'm not sure I wanted to be reminded that's going to be 84 in 2 days, but I was thinking about Roger's sermon last week when he talked about Caleb. I don't think I could climb that mountain, but I still feel fairly good at 84. But that's not the first time Johnny has sang to me happy birthday. Several years ago, we were at camp, and he wrote a song on my birthday. I think it was "This Old Man Is Getting Old" or something to the tune of "This Old House," if you remember that song. And I didn't appreciate it so much then, but I do now because I know it was done in love and appreciation. No, I enjoyed it then too. I want us to look tonight at a very familiar scripture, one that probably most of us here of any age up 10, 11, 12 years old, I'm sure, could quote the scripture because you've heard it so many times. When you think about how people read the Bible, and you think, how could they read the Bible so many different ways? Can you just read it one way? Well, actually, you can only read it one way, but for some of the doctrines that are preached today, you would have to read it several different ways. So I want us to look at Mark 16:16, a very familiar scripture. It's very plain, and yet it's very controversial. I grew up in a religious environment that did not teach the truth on Mark 16:16. Now, I'll talk about that just a little more later in the lesson. But when I learned the truth, it made me wonder, how do people miss so plain a statement? How do they misunderstand something's plain and simple? In fact, it really takes help to misunderstand Mark 16:16. Because it's so simple, so plain. If you just read it like it is and believe it like it's written, there should be no problem with it. About any sixth grader, I guess that's about when you start diagramming, or at least it was when I was in the sixth grade. It's probably preschool by now. But nevertheless, when you diagram the sentence, it makes it even plainer. He that believeth is baptized shall be saved. The same one that believeth is the same one that's baptized. It takes both to receive the blessings of the verse. And yet, it is a very controversial statement. You rarely ever hear it on television. And the televangelists generally just simply stay away from that particular verse. They practice what sometimes we call the Passover. They just pass over it, you know. But if they do mention it, then they have to take time to try to explain it away, to explain it that it doesn't really mean what it says, and that it's really not saying what we read it to say. And so they have to give some kind of explanation that says, well, that's how it reads, but that's not what it means. Here's what it means. And I've often said, is that a storm that I'm hearing? I thought all of a sudden my hearing aids started working or something, you know. Jimmy, are you the one that said I'd preach up a storm? Well, anyway, I hope you can hear me over the storm. It might be like one guy said, I can hear plain, and I'll swap with anybody that can't. But nevertheless, when you think about this verse, and you think about so many different ways, I want to look at 4 different ways that it is read in the religious world and even non-religious. and then look at the one way that it's written in the Bible that's viewed by others. First of all, let's think of this one. He that believeth and is baptized shall not be saved. Now you think, why would anybody read it like that? Well, now, first of all, nobody's going to admit that they read the verse like this. They're not going to say, oh, that's the way we read it. But that's the way they practice it. And that's how it would have to read to make what they believe to be true. Now you say, well, who would believe it this way? Well, there's at least two groups, the atheists and the Jews, the Muslims, the Hindus that do not believe in Jesus Christ, and the atheists do not believe in God either. Those people would say, you know, it doesn't matter what you do. I mean, there's no salvation to be obtained. So you can believe and you can be baptized, but you're not going to be saved because there is no salvation. There is no God. There is no Christ. There is no church. There is nothing that we believe in. And so they would read it that way as they would hold this view. Of course, we know that would be contrary to many other scriptures in the Bible. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Said at least twice. There is no God. And yet they have a difficult time explaining a lot of different things. When somebody says, I believe in the theory of evolution, I want to say, well, which theory do you believe? I mean, there's so many theories. And some of them conflict each other. And so that doesn't really say much to me if they say, well, I believe in